The reason for which the nuclear energy and substances released in Chernobyl's explosion in 1986 haven't been controlled is mostly because the incident released a cloud of particles and gases that with the pass of time have been spreading, making it hard for liquidators to get rid of the radiation. There is an estimate that Chernobyl may be evitable in 20,000 years. The human health in the exposure to nuclear energy is in complete risk since it may cause genetic disorders, cancer, and leukemia. There are two ways of nuclear chain reaction control, that is called nuclear power, and uncontrolled, since it's made of nuclear weapons. In both, the process starts by neutrons being released by fission, that is like a nuclear reaction, that later produces an additional fission in a new nucleus that produces neutrons and repeats itself. This releases energy and creates the explosion.
This is the exponential function graph, the basic graph, and its reference point is at 0, 1. Its domain is all real numbers and its range is 0 to infinite.
The world's worst civilian nuclear disaster took place when a reactor exploded at the Chernobyl power plant in Ukraine, then most of the Soviet Union. Present-day Belarus, 60% of the initial fallout, the radioactive cloud spread further to cover most of Europe. The Chernobyl nuclear power plant was one of the Soviet Union's most advanced facilities. The first two reactors became operational in the late 1970s. The fourth reactor was the newest, going online in the 1983. On April 26, 1986, technicians were prepared to test the backup cooling system in reactor number 4, but the routine safety drill went horribly wrong. A nuclear reactor is like a giant steam engine. Uranium fuel rods react to produce massive amounts of heat that converts water into steam, which drive huge turbines to generate electricity. A peculiarity of the design of the control rods caused a dramatic power surge as they were inserted into the reactor. The interaction of very hot fuel with the cooling water led to fuel fragmentation along with rapid steam production and an increase in pressure. At 1:23 am, reactor 4 exploded. It spread 8 tons of radioactive debris to the atmosphere. 115 million people were evacuated from a 13-kilometer zone around the power plant. The battle to put out the fire inside lasted for 15 days. More than 500,000 military and civilian personnel were drafted to deal with the accident and its aftermath. 31 of the initial firefighters and plant workers died within days from acute radiation sickness. The toxicity of the cloud was equivalent to 400 Hiroshima atomic bomb explosions. The remaining 3 reactors continued operating until the year 2000 that the Chernobyl complex was completely shut down. The international community built a new confinement structure for Reactor 4. It stands 110 meters tall, higher than the Statue of Liberty, and wide enough to fit a ship the size of the Titanic to avoid more radiation of spreading. The massive dome will slide over Reactor number 4. The confinement structure is expected to last 100 years. Two examples of exponential growth is a car increasing its speed and a rocket launching. Because the straight line graphs represent steady increases, but exponential curve graph shows growth happening at a faster and faster rate, increasing the speed.
Exponential growth happens when a certain model keeps growing faster and faster. The opposite of exponential growth is exponential decay, that keeps decaying instead of growing. They are both represented by a number to the power of x. The main characteristics are that it never stops growing or decaying. It is used to graph or model expectations on what is going to happen in order to have an estimate. It can also be used to model something that is going to in the past to see how much it grew. Speaking of things that have been massively growing lately, I want to talk about nuclear energy. It is not a clean source of energy because it causes so much damage to the environment, when you can just use wind or solar energy that is much cleaner and does not affect the world at all. But nuclear energy costs so much less and is much better at producing energy, so that is why it's mostly chosen among the world. It is so good at producing energy that even Mexico uses it, and there is a plant located in Mexico that I don't think should be there because it just causes so much damage to the environment. To have nuclear power is a 50-50 for most of the people because nuclear power is so much cheaper to produce, but it affects the environment so bad. But it creates all the power that humans need to survive and in order to live better lives. Chernobyl could have been prevented by having proper controls and protocols in order for it to be much safer. But ironically, the accident happened at a test run in order for it to be safe. There were many ways to stop the radiation from spreading, but I personally think that it was hard and costly to get all the methods and get them to Chernobyl in time, so I don't think it would have been possible. Mexico was hardly affected by Chernobyl, aside from making us do more safety procedures and maybe have more control over what our power does. Some consequences of the Chernobyl disaster is that it affected agricultural land, nearby cities, killed many animals and crops, and contaminated many nearby bodies of water. And it affected countries, but making them realize what are some of the consequences of the nuclear power and how they should be taken seriously and have proper safety procedures, and it affected the land of many other countries. Nuclear weapons affect other countries because since powerful countries have many different weapons, that means that the whole world could be destroyed in a matter of hours. And that is a very scary thought, because when a country decides to launch a nuclear weapon, they are affecting the whole world, for better or worse. Because launching a nuclear weapon means that they have made a decision to kill a country and destroy their land. I feel that nuclear weapons should be gone. There is no need for a single weapon that could destroy an entire civilization in a matter of seconds. But having all countries disarming their bombs is not an easy decision to make, because there is a huge distrust between a lot of countries, and that means that they are willing to keep some of those nuclear weapons secret in order to have the upper hand in case something goes wrong. This math project was pretty fun and interesting in many of my teammates' opinions because it was pretty fun and made us look at math in a different way to what we normally look and see that it applies in real life as well.